What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Bituation Room on a Friday. So happy. So happy to have you here. Glad you decided to press play. Glad you decided to stop by. We've got a good show. I'm continuing the streak of, well, not the streak, maybe. I'm continuing. Well, I'm excited. Let me just rephrase everything. I'm excited that I have an extra Friday, an extra show of the week, um, to actually have guests on, to invite people onto the show, like Max Elbaum a couple weeks ago. And in today's case, a Cuban journalist by the name of Liz Oliva Fernandez, who is with me to talk about two new documentaries that she's put out with Belly of the Beast Cuba. And they're fascinating. They're excellent. And they're all about US Cuba relations and also about a guy who is currently on trial. No, not Donald Trump, a Democrat on trial for corruption. And that is Senator Bob Menendez of New Jersey. And Liz has devoted an entire documentary to him. So super excited to have her on. And if you're here, just remember to share and like the stream. If you're on Twitch, become a member over there and skip all those ads. If you're on YouTube, you can become a member and get access to our Wednesday bonus shows. Same with Twitch. If you're a patron of the show, patreon.com/bituationroom, that's my personal preference. You can just support and get ad-free content, as well as discounts on merch, discounts on the American Prospect, access to AMAs, access to telling me who I should invite on next, as well as, God, a cachet of bonus episodes. On Wednesday, we talked about Bleach Blonde, Bad Built, Butch Body. We talked about Scarlett Johansson being used by OpenAI and Sam Altman, and a little bit about nuclear power being now floated as the thing that will power the AI so that we can create fake girlfriends and have dating concierges, and is the reason that like search is now completely fucked. So that's good. Get a load of that. Patreon.com/Bituation Room or become a member on YouTube or Twitch. And with that, let me bring her in. Super happy to have her all the way from Havana, Cuba. She's an award-winning Cuban journalist with Belly of the Beast, an independent media outlet covering Cuba and US-Cuba relations. She's the presenter of two groundbreaking new docs, Hardliner on the Hudson and Uphill on the Hill, which are respectively about Bob Menendez's murky rise to power and Biden's embrace of Trump's Cuba policy. Although, are things changing? The film documents Liz's experience as a Black Global South journalist coming to the U.S. to investigate mostly white politicians and special interests waging economic war on her country. And you can watch all those films for free on Belly of the Beast YouTube channel or on bellyofthebeastcuba.com. Please welcome Liz Oliva Fernandez. Hi, Liz.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me, Francesca.
Yeah, thanks so much for being here. Yes, you get the stand-up comic intro, a lot of pomp. I don't have the music, but something like that.
I feel it. I feel it.
You feel it. Okay, good. And I'm happy that you're here because I know internet connection in Cuba is not always a sure thing. It's very difficult. However much data this is eating from your phone, I will pay for that data.
It's unnecessary. Don't worry.
But you have been a journalist. How long have you been logging stories, usually from Cuba? These two documentaries are different, but tell me how long you've been doing this, how you got your start, and yeah, just tell me about you.
Well, yeah, well, I used to be a journalist for Cuban television. I used to cover in like international affairs. I used to tell Cubans how is the world outside of this island.
Right.
And everything changed in 2020 in the middle of the pandemic, COVID pandemic. I just received a call of a friend that a US journalist and director was trying to look for a Cuban to do a documentary about the impact of the sanctions on the Cuban people. I just go through the whole process of casting and everything, and at the end, I get in. I became the presenter of the War on Cuba, a documentary series of 6 part that shows the impact that the sanctions, U.S. sanctions, has on Cuban people.
Nice.
I'm talking about normal like daily people, nothing relevant that has been impacted by the sanctions in so many ways. I'm talking about Ernesto that needs prosthetic legs that they can access because of sanctions. I'm talking about Roxana. She's a doctor from a medical family doctor, and she doesn't have enough medicines for her patients. I'm talking about that Mar. She's a scientist that she was part of the team of the Cuban team who developed no one but two vaccines against
That's right.
COVID-19 pandemic. I'm talking about Adrian, it's a Pixis entrepreneur in Cuba that is pretty difficult for him to have access to internet. He's a software developer, so he suffered a lot. I'm talking about a guy that ride a bike in order to, like a taxi,
Mhm.
uh, in order to get food for his family, and how oil shortages has impacted him, and also the lack of tourism. The thing that is funny, because if you ride a bike, supposedly the oil shortage is going to benefit you, but it's not, because that doesn't mean that the economy of the people are going to be affected, so they're not going to have enough money to pay you for being the taxi. So everything
Right.
is like domino effects. And
Yes.
this is our real people, real stories. There are Cubans who live in Cuba, but there are no apparently show in any other news, broadcast news in the US. Because also, if you hear about the sanctions in US on media outlets, you are going to hear, okay, the sanctions is only hurt the government, blah, 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 bullshit. The
Mhm.
sanctions has an impact on people. But at that time,
Yeah.
that's why I
That's how
went to the
you got
United
into, so
States.
you started this six-part series looking at the impacts on
Exactly.
everyday people of the embargo. And yeah, I mean, the sanctions just broadly. We have seen even the most supposedly draconian sanctions on Russia, for example, and the oligarchs that they're supposed to target, they find a way around those. You see North Korea and you're like, Kim Jong Un doesn't look like he's starving. You know what I mean? Like, the people of North Korea are the ones who are suffering from those kinds of sanctions. And the same with Cuba, right? It is people not able to access medicine or proper internet connection or whatnot. I mean, it's that impacts them. And I am fascinated. I am, yes, I think we have to focus on US foreign policy. But and so I love that these two documentaries really do that. I I wanted to, I guess, talk about before we get into now, what happened under Obama. Like, I actually had the privilege of visiting Cuba in 2015, I believe, and or 2014 or something like this, and it was fantastic. I mean, I went and it was during the time when, travel restrictions were eased, and I had the time of my life. Havana's incredible. I learned so much. I love the National Museum and all that. I mean, I was a typical tourist. I learned about history, I enjoyed a beach, all that, all that. What happened under Obama, and how did that change under Trump?
Well, when President Obama, Raul Castro decided to normalize relations between both countries, everything was really great. As you said, Havana became the epicenter of the world. Everybody wants to come to Cuba. Everybody was looking for, because if the US president went to Cuba, I need to go to Cuba to see by my own what is going on there. So everything was fantastic, and for the first time, because you have to notice something, like Cuba is not Russia. Cuba is the country has been under the sanctions for more time in modern history, more
Yeah,
than others.
six
So
decades.
my mom was born under the sanctions. I was born under the sanctions, and the children of my friends has been born under the sanctions. So I'm talking about 3, 4 generations that has been born under the sanctions, under the U.S. sanctions, and it's not the same sanctions. The sanctions has been changed because after 60 years, you can imagine, okay, Cuban government, you need a plan B, even a plan C.
Right.
But after that time, because the sanctions is not the same, has been changed with time, has been like going to target a specific part of the economy, sectors of the economy, if they saw that there is a source of income for Cuba.
Right.
So at this
You
time,
mean
at this point, where
targeting
lack of
wherever there's money, the sanctions will
yeah,
target that
exactly.
area
Where
so
is the money
that
is coming?
no more money can go in. And we're talking like every day,
Exactly.
like again, even the
Exactly.
tourism industry.
Exactly. That was the first thing was the cruiser, the cruise ship that were banned from Cuba from the Trump administration. But when Obama, and this is something that is pretty close to me because I have a lot of friends that already left Cuba. But at that time, for the first time, the conversation with my friends and my family and my neighbors that have my age was for the first time everybody was imagining, okay, I don't need to go to anywhere. I
Yeah.
can stay here. I can stay in my country. I can build a future here because we have a future here. Because you see, the thing is going to be better and better with the day. So doesn't mean that we have opportunities in our own country.
Right.
But everything was erased like so quickly like that with the Trump came to the power.
Yeah.
That and people in Cuba wasn't expecting that because people in Cuba very rational would say, okay, Trump is a businessman. He wants to do business with Cuba. He's going to be open to do more business and to earn more money or whatever.
Right, exactly.
So
He'll wanna
he's
put a
not
Trump
going to
golf course
change.
there or something.
Exactly, exactly. In fact, he registered his brand in a propiedad cubana de propiedad industrial. I don't know how to translate that in English,
Yeah.
but he registered his brand in Cuban national with the Cuban national government.
Wow. So he was
So
looking to
everybody,
do something with Cuba.
of course, he sent people here to looking around to see business opportunities. So everything changed in Florida.
Mm. And I do think that politically, and this brings us to Biden, what you document in the documentaries is that with Florida no longer being an in-play swing state for Democrats, there's a lot more pressure, and maybe that allowed Obama to actually a lot more pressure has been relieved from Democrats because they don't have to bend over backwards for a largely right-leaning, wealthy Cuban population that lives in Florida. They can sort of respond to, I think, the broad majority of Americans, including Americans of like Latino descent, who don't believe that the embargo is good for anybody. Um, so, and yet, Biden has largely continued Trump's policies, even though he was instrumental in helping soften relations under Obama. I believe it was Biden and John Kerry that helped Obama with that whole thing, but he's not walked it back. And in part, and we'll talk that something has recently changed, but in part that's because of certain Democrats like Bob Menendez. And I just want to play this clip. This is from your documentary, Hardliner on the Hudson, again, Belly of the Beast, Cuba. And this is how it sort of starts. There's an intro to you, but this is kind of how it starts.
New Jersey Democratic Senator Bob Menendez has been indicted by a federal grand jury.
3 counts of conspiracy to commit bribery, extortion, and fraud.
Vast corruption.
$480,000 in cash.
A $60,000 Mercedes-Benz convertible.
Even gold bars.
It's straight out of The Sopranos.
In the United States, Menendez has become infamous for corruption scandals. But in Cuba, we know about him for another reason.
Si no hubiera un Bob Menendez, la política de los Estados Unidos hacia Cuba hubiera sido muy diferente.
So this is Bob Menendez in Spanish bragging, if there was not a Bob Menendez, the U.S. policy towards Cuba would be very, very different. And he's bragging, and he almost says this, Liz, if there wasn't a Bob Menendez, which I think feels like he is admitting what a tool he is. Like he's such a like if there wasn't me, like he's like a money bucket. I mean, he really, anyway, I think it's very funny. Si no hubiera un Bob Menendez, like he's just this like monolith. Anyway, I'll play it and we can talk.
Dijeron que cuando Biden fue elegido iba a regresar a la política de Obama. Bueno, casi ha pasado un año y no se ha regresado a tal política. Al contrario, el presidente Biden ha endurecido la política en contra del régimen, sobre todo de sanciones.
So there he is again bragging, and I'm assuming on Cuban media, or maybe I'm assuming maybe a Spanish language like
Miami
Florida,
media.
Miami media, exactly, yeah. That everyone was expecting, he says, that, Biden would reverse Trump's policies, but he hasn't. In fact, he's toughened it in some ways, and he's bragging about this. And again, for Miami media, a very specific subsect of Cubans in the world, obviously, who have lived there for many, many years. But anyway, let's finish this.
This may be the single biggest reason why the Biden administration is still waging an economic war against my country. Some people say that Biden has let Menendez dictate his Cuba policy in exchange for his support in a divided Senate.
Los asesores de Biden de la Casa Blanca han dicho, hemos incumplido una promesa de campaña porque no merece, aún así, una bronca con el senador Menendez que vendría si tratamos de cambiar la política hacia Cuba.
So this is, AF is from Miami, yeah? Anyway, this is basically a commentator saying that the Biden administration has said that they don't want trouble with Menendez because they need his vote in the Senate, so they're just going to go along with whatever he says on Cuba.
Si te voy a dar mi apoyo, no quiero que tú vayas a hacer ningún cambio o que no vayas a hacer una decisión sin consultar conmigo.
And Bob Menendez saying, I don't want you to make any decisions without consulting me first.
Bob, I got to talk to you about Cuba. Okay.
That's Biden that's Biden in the State of the Union saying, Bob, I gotta talk to you about Cuba. Oh my God, he's such an idiot. Okay, here, let's give Liz her
Came
due.
to New Jersey to try to understand how Bob Menendez became so powerful. I want to know why he opposes better relations with Cuba and whether people here agree with him.
Okay, so there's that intro clip. It's such a good doc, but let's back up a little bit, because interestingly, or maybe we fast forward, just 10 days ago, right? I'll show you this headline. Reuters reports U.S. removes Cuba from the list of countries not cooperating fully against terrorism. So they're still on the, I believe, terrorism list, but they're off the list that's like extra bad, not cooperating fully. And Liz, this is really fitting because this is at a time when obviously Menendez this is his second time he's been indicted, and he's standing trial right now. And so it seems like maybe Joe Biden finding a little bit of a backbone here to change policy without their boy Menendez. But explain like how important Menendez is to Cuban relations, like what a block he is.
Well, he used to be the head of the Foreign Affairs Committee in the Senate. That's a really important position. They have a lot of power and influence. But I have to say that, in my opinion, Menendez is the single biggest reason, but also is the single biggest excuse to do something. Because you don't need Congress support if you want to remove Cuba from the state-sponsored terrorism list, or if you want to do some things that you don't need Congress support for, a lot of things that you can move forward and you can push. What happened when Obama did the normalization process with Cuba? He was pushing hard. Was Obama leading the process? Was Obama dictating? Okay, so and everybody was on board. Yeah. Everybody was on board. Okay, let's do business now. Right. And everybody was running to Havana, and up here on the hill, we interviewed one guy, Carlos Gutierrez, who used to be the Secretary of Treasury Secretary for Bush. Mm-hmm. He was a really Republican, conservative guy, and he was on board. He was on board, and he visited Cuba, and everything changed for him. Right. Now he's independent, but he realized that the old point of view, the old school, the old conservative about Cubans, the hate between Cuban Americans and the old Cuban, they don't want to come back regime, blah, 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 the same shit that always is not going to help nobody.
Right.
On the both sides, least on the Cuban people. So he changed her mind. He flipped. And now he's trying to push him for more business with Cuba. He wants to try to push him for coming back to the normalization, because they
Yeah.
know. And also, if you ask him, because I have been doing this for 4 years now, like I focus my profession in my journalism, my reporter in US sanctions on Cuba and also US and Cuban relations. And I have been interviewing people from all part of the United States, Republican, Democrats, that they come down here to trying to do business. They want to do business. They don't care about politics. They
Right.
just care about money. And they are
Right.
interested in coming back. I'm talking about people from Texas, Louisiana, Republicans, the more conservative one. They say, okay, this is bullshit. We need to come back to Obama era, because when Obama era, with US policy on Cuba was more effective than ever, because they were like doing business, moving the things. So they
Right.
trying, the goal was the same. Okay, we want to overthrow Cuban government, but in a different way.
Right. Exactly. Well, I think that's an interesting thing, because when I visited, I swear I went to a hotel to use the internet, because where I was staying didn't have the internet. So I go to the hotel to use the internet. And as I'm in this hotel in a separate room, there was clearly a bunch of Americans visiting, and they were being given some sort of pitch. And I was like trying to listen in, but it was clearly some sort of like real estate investment timeshare type pitch. And I remember, especially, those of us on the left, progressives, who really believe that Cuba should be for the Cubans, at the same time, we don't believe in the embargo. We were concerned of like, is, Starbucks moving into Cuba tomorrow? Is the economy going to be destroyed al revés, in favor of capitalism, versus, communism? And so obviously that didn't happen yet. But where do you stand on that sort of like, if and when finally the embargo drops? Or are you not even think, you're just like, we have to end the sanctions first?
Okay, for me, that's the main things. And I have to say, I don't want Starbucks here. I've been part of the boycott. No.
Exactly.
Really, we have one of the best coffee around the world. We don't need a Starbucks at all. But I'm pretty agree with you that the economy would be dragged now.
Right.
And in my opinion, we need to get away from the embargo.
Yes.
We need to start to thinking about the consequence. Because, for example, now Cuba has a private sector is continue growing from the normalization process to now, and I can see a lot of challenge. For example, like things that the working class in Cuba has been already conquering when the revolution came to the power, and now the private sector is different because workers work more than 8 hours because they don't have rights to vacations or maternity leave, all kind of things, or they don't hire Black people in a high positions. There is a lot of things that is going on with the private sector in Cuba, but this is something that we need to start to learn how to deal with. So it's not being afraid of what's going on. It's just trying to be smart and to trying to regularize and to trying to present a better alternative with the Cuban. But right now we are out of control.
Yeah.
Right now we don't have nothing. We don't have nothing. The crisis is getting worse.
I want to go back to Bob in a second, but tell me about that crisis, because I know we all saw during obviously COVID hit Cuba really hard, in addition to the Trump administration. So I know there were, tourism really did stop. And for a lot of European countries that don't have such stupid relationships with Cuba, European tourists would frequent Cuba a lot. And I know that COVID really obviously crushed that industry. But then on top of that, we saw, protests on July 11th. I know you covered some of that in the summer of 2022, right? 2021, excuse me. Where's that movement now, and how are things economically now?
Or if I have to compare, the situation now is worse than in 2021.
No, wow.
Yeah, I have to say that Trump hits Cuba first, and after COVID hits Cuba, and after that, when we start to thinking about the tourism going well, we are start to increase the tourism again. Esta hits Cuba because, okay, Europeans love Cuba, But now they have to choose between Cuba and the United States because U.S. government is applying ESTA, and because Cuba is in the state sponsor of terrorism list. Now the Europeans who come to Cuba as tourists, they need a visa to go to the United States, and the most of them are denied. Can you imagine asking a European that is used to going around without asking nothing, that now they need a visa to go to the United States? And not just a visa, they need an appointment that maybe takes 2 years, and they have business, academic issues, cultural issues, everything.
This is if
I'm
they
talking about
visit.
United States.
This is if they visited Cuba.
Yeah, of course. If they
So
visit Cuba, they can't go to the United States on their ESTA visa.
wow, 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 wow.
So that's why I'm telling you at the beginning, the sanctions is not the same. They are moving around, whatever is getting a better position to
So,
Cuba.
as Bob Menendez bragged, they actually are worse in some ways now.
Yeah.
Under Biden. And, you know, again, Trump would, this is, Liz, I know we're talking about Cuba, but we have seen our President Biden continue Trump policies in all kinds of aspects, but especially in foreign policy and immigration. So attitudes towards asylum seekers, obviously what's going on in Gaza and Israel, the support for Israel is just the same as Trump. Maybe Trump would make it even more, he would relish in it more, but it's basically the same policy. But I'm fascinated by Bob Menendez for like a bunch of reasons, some petty reasons I can explain to you maybe privately, but tell me about his rise. You go to New Jersey, you go cover what I think even New Jerseyans argue like is one of the most corrupt states politically. And
I didn't know that when I get there.
You didn't know that, right? Right. It's like, had you seen The Sopranos though? I mean,
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but what did you learn about Bob's rise to power? And specifically, I think what I was shocked by was he actually openly spoke about supporting Cuban extremists, like anti-government extremists who actually participated in some terrorist acts against the government of Cuba. And he argued that that was okay and those folks should be defended.
Yeah. Well, Menendez past, Menendez beginning. It's really sketchy. It's what it is. It is. I don't know. I was really surprised how people knew about this stuff, and they know that this is a U.S. senator of the United States that have links with terrorist groups, and it's okay. And people continue voting in, and they know that they have like a lot of corruption charge, and there is a lot of corruption scandals that involve Menendez's name, and people continue to vote him. So what's going on here? And I was really shocked by the fact this is like mad. This is really the works, the way that they work, the way that the power that they hold. Like, it was funny because when they talk about Cuba, they say like these people has been in power for too long. They have been in power for too long. This is a dictatorship. Nobody can go against him. Well, trying to go against him in their own territory. And I will tell you, sorry, or you can ask to the people who actually trying to run against whatever is part of the machine, the New Jersey machine. Because when someone in the interview, someone tell me about, no, because the New Jersey machine, and I was, what is that? New Jersey machine? Maybe it's my English is not good, so good. But say, no, I can explain you what is the machine works. And it was like,
yes,
what? So
the Democratic machine, the stranglehold it has on, because again, Jersey is, I mean, there's some right wingers, right? There's some Republicans, but it's largely going to, especially as a Senate seat, going to go blue. But and New York has the same machine, that Democratic stranglehold. California, same thing, these deep blue states, but you can't upset the incumbent, the one who's in power. And yeah, you do a great job of explaining that in the doc.
But even if you're a Democrat too, it's impossible to you to go through that if you don't have the support of the people who are really how to see it in Congress.
Exactly.
So how
his rise is great because he actually was a mentor to a mayor. He was the
Who was convicted
who was convicted of corruption.
Menendez
Yes.
pushed him through the bars. Yeah.
And Menendez
Yeah.
testifies against him. Menendez, who he
Yeah,
was
exactly.
right, and Menendez testifies against him and then takes his place as mayor.
Yeah, exactly. Is what it is. He betrayed his mentor. I remember that I have an interview with someone that's part of the federal government in New Jersey, and he was told like, "This is a family arguing. Don't worry about that because we love both families, Menendez family, Hamilton family. So both they are great guys, great guys." And it was like, what? This is not something small. This is something big, but this is not the first time that he trying to push someone under the bus in order to get some more power. It's funny because when you talk about the links about Menendez with Omega 7 is one extremist terrorist group based in New Jersey, who committed attempts against even diplomats, UN diplomats in New York, through the light, they kill it. And Menendez helped them to put money in the legal defense of them. I remember that and in fact, we quote this in the documentary because Menendez said that there is time when the law has to be broken.
That's right.
That was
a quote he gave a
70s,
newspaper.
80s.
There's a time when the law has to be broken, and donated money to. I mean, this should have disqualified him from holding any higher office off the bat. Imagine if, right now you get called a terrorist if you don't, if you think what Israel's doing is wrong, for example. But imagine if like a senator or like a mayor were giving money to Hamas, it's just, and got convicted or and defended that or was like giving a legal defense to a Hamas terrorist. Like this is the equivalent. And the dude is like, oh, it's okay because if it's a Cuban dissident terrorist, that's fine. And his political career continued to grow and rise.
Yeah. That's been in this case.
Sorry, just to clarify, the Union City mayor was Arthur Wichert, who he then he testified against. And that again started his rise into Congress and then into obviously into the Senate and as a member of the the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, which is massively powerful. He's resigned from that position since, but now he is arguing, and this is the best. He's arguing what Donald Trump is arguing on the national scale. He's saying that his lawyers are saying he has immunity from any prosecution over these bribery charges, gold bars, whatnot, lavish vacations, cars, because he was a senator and it's like senatorial privilege to be able to do this. And that is what they're going with now. So we'll see how this entire trial plays out. But where's the money? Like, where's the money behind this, Liz? Like, why advocate for such strict embargo against Cuba? Because you're talking about Republicans and Democrats, some of them saying, man, there's actually a lot of money to be had in investment in Cuba and normalizing relations. But then there's a bunch of money on the other side paying Menendez. You got Marco Rubio, obviously. You've got other Republicans and some Democrats. Are they just sort of like wealthy Cubans who left the island or never even went there? Because Menendez, by the way, Cuban, but has never visited Cuba.
No, he never put a foot in Cuba. That's right.
Which is interesting. So by the way, because you actually talk about number of Cubans who once they visited Cuba, they completely changed their minds about whether there should be an embargo. They changed their minds about the Cuban people. They changed their minds about the government. I mean, not fully, but in many ways. Like, anyway, please.
No. I just want to say, I don't know what is the money coming from. It's not easy to track, to follow the money. It's not 2 + 2 is 4. It's not like that because there is a lot of legal ways to give money to a congressperson and to try to. So it's more complex for that, and I would be thrilled if Belly of the Beast can figure out where is the money is coming from straight and pull all the things and put everything together in the puppet. But it's difficult. Of course, that there are economic interests. Of course, there is political interest, and also one thing that I always asked, like, was wondering is why every Congress men or women have a talking point. You know this person because they are advocating for this topic or another one. It's like they became necessary to something. Now they became necessary, but for elections,
right,
and Cuban vote.
right.
And one thing that is really important is I really have this perspective that for Congress people, it's really difficult to talk positive about Cuba without backlash. It's almost impossible because Cuba is a really polarized topic, and nobody's will to take the risk. And also, these people, Menendez, Marco Rubio, Mario Diaz Salazar, Balar, all of them are really vocal about this. And they talk about like they knew, like they know about what's going on here, but they are far away. They don't know nothing about Cuba. They don't understand Cuba at the point that they don't believe that the private sector is a sin. They say that this is the Cuban government creation or whatever, and they put in excuse there. Say, how is this woman taken seriously in Congress if she can say a sentence without like make that face like what's going on here? Because they don't know, they don't understand Cuba, they don't know what they don't
Are you
know.
referring to Raul Castro's daughter? Who are you referring to? A woman can say that in Congress. Sorry, just to clarify.
No. I was referring to Maria Elvira Salazar. The idea that she's pushing, like in Cuba there is not such a thing like a private sector at all.
Oh yeah. And
because now they like put a law, like writing down a law trying to avoid investment from the US to the private sector in Cuba. And that makes it, and they make all the things illegal. So now it's illegal for the US funds to come to Cuba to go through the private sector.
You talk about that, I mean, instantly. I know we're ping-ponging a lot, but like, I mean, the when Trump came back and you know, bank accounts are frozen. Bank accounts are not, and people can't actually move their money around if they have any dealings in Cuba. So that's massive. That's a huge block. I mean, when it comes to things, what about access to, you know, even basic things? I'm thinking like, I think we used an Airbnb service when I stayed there. Are people accessing, I don't even know, like Venmo, you know, things like that. Like, are those at all accessible to the Cuban people?
Not at all.
Yeah.
For example, for me, but okay, that's money. And but for me being in your show right now, I need to use a VPN that said I'm not in Cuba, I'm in Miami in order to let me go in. So I don't have access to Zoom or Amazon or forget about Venmo, bank accounts or credit cards or whatever. I have a friend, she's studying in Spain, and she has been going through a hell because she received a scholarship to a master degree in Spain, and she couldn't open a bank account even when she was living in Spain because she's coming from a country that support terrorism. So it was illegal for her open an account in Spain for like some scholarship, put her money to pay the university.
That's wild. That's why, and so emblematic of, yes, every day, even if you leave, even these are people who leave.
Exactly. This is the people who live. This is the people who live. Trying to send money to a friend of you, don't do it. But for example, but they don't do it. Trying to send money, $5, PayPal to a friend, and put a present from Cuba, or just a flag, and you have your entire account gonna be blocked. So
Did
that's
you
the
have a
thing.
chance? Did you have a chance to meet with any of the young, new like squad members, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or Greg Casar, from Florida? I believe, is he Florida or maybe I'm getting, yeah, I think he's from Florida. Texas. Sorry, Texas. My bad.
Texas.
But like
All
these
right.
young progressive Latino Congress people who are starting to try to turn the page on a very right wing posturing towards Latin America. Did you have any success, or were you able to talk to any of those folks?
No, sadly, no. But I'm willing to. I'm really looking for do that kind of interviews. Having that kind of conversations because I want to understand their position and I want to know why they looking for if they are paying attention to Cuba at all because I know there is a lot of things happening in the United States right now.
Yeah.
And these people, they are minority, they are not majority in the US Congress, and I'm pretty sure there are full hands. But I would be thrilled. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. But I would
Yeah.
be thrilled if they have the opportunity to talk me or at least open to consider Cuba as a maybe a talking point.
Yeah, I think it's worth it. Look, I don't think it can be overstated how hypocritical and
Yeah,
disgusting it
it
is
is.
for the main legislator who has been blocking progress on Cuba in the congressional and Senate level to have been twice indicted for corruption himself after claiming that Cuba is so anti-democratic and corrupt and this and that, right? So like we are turning the page hopefully on these old Democrats and these corrupt Democrats as well. But I did want to ask you lastly, Liz, before I let you go, and feel free if there's something else you want to add. But talk to me about the president, Diaz-Canel. After the protests, and I'm curious about where things stand now. I remember after the protests in 2021, there was some softening from Diaz-Canel. Maybe it was around internet access. I can't remember what it was, but please enlighten me and our listeners as to what, if anything, has changed since that time.
And what do you want to know specifically? I'm sorry.
Just like if there was any reforms that went through, after the massive protests, or if Diaz-Canel, like, how is it going? What is he, like, what are things like there? Or is it just economically things are so wrecked that people are, if they can, leaving?
Yeah, exactly. That is what it is. Like, I remember that phrase stayed with me when July 11 protests happened in 2021. The president said something like, "I wanna apologize with that group of people that the revolution has been failed to them." And I just really want to. I just really want to believe that he was talking by heart because this is what it happened. Like, in some point, there is a sector of the population that was left behind. And that wasn't the goal of the revolution for my grandfather fight for. That wasn't at all. But the economical situation is so bad because you have to understand that the sanctions affect all of us, but it's going to affect more or less depending on your race, your gender, your geographical situation, if you live in the city or rural area, if you live in downtown, or if you live outside of the city. So depends on many factors. So there is people that are suffering the most, not just the impact of the sanctions, also the things that are happening, the crisis in Cuba itself. So it hurts. So the people is running away if they can. If they know, they're trying to find a way to survive. But it's pretty difficult trying to survive. It's tiring. People always talk about how resilient Cubans are, but we have to. We don't have any other option. We need to be creative and innovate ourselves and trying to think out of the box because that's our entire life. That's
like
our
a nonstop
reality.
hustle. Yeah.
Exactly,
No, and
and that's tiring. And it
Yeah,
sucks
and
to
the
me.
people I knew who, when I visited there, actually met with another documentarian and journalist, and she has since left. And she didn't want to go, but all of her friends left. And when all of your friends leave, what are you going to do? And the stupid sanctions, the idea is like, oh, well, then the Cuban people will rise up and topple their leader or whatever. And it's just like, no, man, that's not how it works. And the United States has tried every which way to try and, whatever, topple communism in Cuba. It's not working. It still hasn't worked. And now it's just this like limping foreign policy that is ineffective. And in some ways, and this is my belief, I think that you might have more resistance to the current government if and when the embargo is ended, because suddenly there's no more talking point. Like, oh, if only we had got rid of the embargo, things would be better, guys, but we only blame the US. Suddenly there wouldn't be the US to blame, and so it's like it's doing the opposite. It helps
Yeah.
coalesce control rather than, overturn, you know what I'm saying? Rather than change the control.
Yeah, the people who actually, thank you to bring that, because the people who actually see, I think the Cuba crisis is 60% Cuban government, 40% sanctions, or 80% Cuban government, and to 20% US sanctions. And I say, how do you know? How do you know? How
Right.
do you know that data? What is your source? Tell me, because I don't know.
Right.
Because the Cuban government came to the power in 1969, in 1959, and in 61, do you have the sanctions in place? So how do you know?
Right.
How do you
Exactly.
know the data? And also, I'm talking about U.S. sanctions on Cuba. I'm not talking about Tubutu sanctions on Cuba or DR sanctions on Cuba. I'm talking about one of the most powerful countries in the world. And also,
Right.
the people are worried and say that the sanctions are not real, that this is just part of our imagination, or just something that the Cuban government create to blame. Just take the sanctions out of the equation. That's the
Right.
easy solution.
Right.
And we'll see. But let me see, please, because I'm getting old.
No, I think that's really real. It's been hampered. The revolution's been hampered since the beginning because of that, of the sanctions. And it is a nice admission from Canel to say, I know that the revolution hasn't, that the young folks today don't see the fruits that maybe their grandparents saw. It's a very different world. It's a very different
Yeah.
time. And yet again, US policy continues. Liz, you're so wonderful. The documentaries are excellent. You are so good at asking questions and getting in people's faces. You didn't get an interview with Bob Menendez himself, but you really tried, and you did it with a smile, and it was just like so fun. So everybody, bellyofthebeastcuba.com, or let me just show my little, I was going to show everyone the YouTube page over here. Subscribe to the page. There's so many videos, obviously going back many, many years. Well, at least these 4 years. And we only care about when Liz is hosting. So go check it out. Support them however you can. Anything else you want to plug, Liz?
No, just thank you. It would be a pleasure to be in your show and to talk about this. It was really funny. And I just recommend to the people to try to educate themselves about Cuba, to try to, if they have the opportunity, come to visit
Yeah.
and trying to witness in their own eyes what's going on here.
Absolutely. And thank you for continuing to do the work that you do, because I know it's not easy. But yeah, thanks so much, Liz. Take very good care. And thank you guys all for sticking around. I think it's so critical. When I was living in Buenos Aires and doing some reporting from down there, you learn quickly that most news agencies, when they write about Latin America, are all based in Miami, all of them. So there is an implicit bias. We understand where it's coming from. There is a US, but not even just US, a Miami specific gaze towards all of Latin America, which is going to be a right wing, a very anti-communist, even if that phrase is even relevant anymore. Very just like just through the smallest lens. So the fact that Belly of the Beast does the work that they do, they can hire Liz, is fucking incredible. Like it needs to be celebrated and supported. So definitely go check it out. I'll share the links in the description here. But thank y'all so much for sticking around. I love my favorite, not my favorite, because the Frantifa is my favorite, but we have some trolls who are sending me super chats, like TL1524, who gave me $2 to say that I got rocked on Piers Morgan. But like, I like the way you spelled Pierce. It's Piers, like Pier 39, bitch. I didn't get rocked on Piers Morgan. I fucking crushed on Piers Morgan because trans rights are human rights, and I don't give a shit how someone identifies. They should not be bullied. They should not be made to feel like their identities are being criminalized. And until anyone can prove to me that this country gives a shit about women's sports by paying them equally, by giving them equal ad time opportunities, like by not having massive assault scandals in US women's gymnastics, by having like misogynists not be the head of some of these organizations, like Sepp Blatter saying that if women playing soccer wore skirts, we'd watch it more. Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up, women's sports. You don't give a shit. And I will absolutely break down my appearance on Piers at a different time. I'm thinking Wednesday, I'll dive into it, unless the people demand it right now. Because I feel like it's been a long stream. Saul Good says donating that $2 to Drag Queen Story Hour. Yeah, let's do it. Let's friggin' do it. Cassandra Capranica, thanks so much. Says pitching in to help pay Liz's cell bill. I appreciate that. I'm gonna find a way to get that to her because that's not cheap. And Owen Nagel said, thank you so much for that super chat. Hi, Franny. Caught you on Indisputable yesterday. As someone who was viciously bullied for years, it was a tough show to watch, but I want to thank you for everything you said and for always standing up for us. Much love. So, Owen, it's a really good point. And for those of you listening as a podcast, I go on Dr. Richie's show, Indisputable, from time to time on TYT. And yesterday, he does a lot of heavy stories. He does a lot of local niche stories as well. High schools, colleges, and just sort of like everyday bullying, harassment, racism. Again, Karen's freaking out, local police departments abdicating their duties. There's a lot of good local coverage that he picks up. And we did 3 stories on bullying. Like, and I'm not talking about like, oh yeah, what, just light bullying. I'm talking about a 12-year-old committing suicide, which came off the back of another 10-year-old who committed suicide because they were bullied every single day. And you want me to get upset about a 16-year-old track star who won first place in a meet and be okay with the entire crowd booing them? No, absolutely not. I will not have the fucking blood on my hands of trans youth that are already ostracized, bullied. And again, the bullies we were talking about, they weren't necessarily, I don't know, but they did not identify as trans. But we know the disproportionate number of trans, LGBTQ plus, and people who are just, for whatever reason, decided to be picked on by their schools. It is not okay, and it sure as shit is not okay for a fucking international news host to lift up that story like Piers Morgan did and glom on and have all of us idiots flap our flippers and be like, yeah, let's boo a trans athlete. I don't know. Are they 17? Are they 16? Yeah. I'm going to boo clap my blood-soaked flippers in celebration of this. Fuck you. Fuck you, heartless turd. Anyway, thank you so much for that. Electron Creation says, "You're a breath of fresh air today, Fran. I've been here sitting here listening to my roof getting replaced all day." So you mean I'm better than your roof being replaced? Hey, look, they said it couldn't be done. Meanwhile, in Souk says, just a tip, keep up the great work. Thank you so much. And thanks so much for the super sticker as well. And Sarah Benchley, thank you. You're the best. Appreciate y'all. As well as Looney Tunes for resubscribing on Twitch. El Luna also subscribing with Prime. And Pinga Pinto Grande, I didn't thank you, says orcas will not stop until they've had their pound of human flesh. And we talked about the orcas rising up against the yachts. Duncan, your mate. I shat on Piers. Did I shat? Does that mean I like sharted, like I fucked it up, or did I do well? Yeah. I mean, do we have time? Should we just go on this? Should we just talk about this right now? I feel bad for the podcast audience, but we can maybe watch a little bit of it right now because, I don't got nowhere to be. I don't got shit to do. I actually do have stuff to do, like eat. I gotta eat. I'm starving.
Lionel Messi.
Okay, so let's talk about this. Now, I want to preface this by saying, I was back on Piers Morgan, and my clip was the lead off because I'm the crazy person that defends trans people's right to live and exist and have equal rights. Yes, in everything, including sports. But I was originally going to maybe be on with Riley Gaines. And Riley Gaines, if you guys don't remember, I believe was a swimmer. And she's famous because she's a loser. That's right. She lost to a trans woman and she's made it her literal identity, done everything to like make sure we all know that trans women shouldn't compete in women's sports, and freaking out. Goes on Joe Rogan, goes on a bunch of other things. And honestly, that shit's embarrassing as fuck, yo. You're going to be a straight up loser. You're going to make your whole identity out of being not only a transphobe, but a loser. Please, why don't you train? Why don't you train a little bit more? Like, seriously though, seriously, turning female athletes who are mad at a trans person for beating them into superstars is the saddest way to get famous. Just the saddest. Okay, but I wasn't on with Riley, so I didn't get opportunity to call her a loser to her face. But I was on with Tommy Lahren, so close second. And I was on with also a guy named James. I can't remember his last name, but he's going to... Guys, there's a lot to go through on this, but he is going to actually be on my side. And then there's another woman named Esther. And Esther, although very right on Palestine, very wrong on trans rights. And here we go.
Lionel Messi puts his hand up and says, actually, I'm feeling like a woman today. Do you play him in the American women's national team, Francesca? Yes or no?
Yes, right now. Hell yeah. Are you kidding me?
They are useful idiots like you that are validating ascientific nonsense. There's no such thing as gender identity.
Esther, you're the only thing making anyone angry or incensed right now, so you're causing me a mental health issues.
Your guests sit here and they cry boo-hoo
trans
tears
women
about trans rights, but then they dismiss Caitlyn Jenner. Girl, don't you have a Beyonce album to get about?
All right. There.
Teenage runner Aiden Gallagher became the Oregon girls 200-meter state champion last week, posting one of the fastest times in the state's history with a remarkable display of power and stamina. But as Aiden crossed the finish line, something, well, pretty unusual happened. Instead of joyous cheering and adulation, many of the watching spectators loudly booed. Well, the same thing happened when Gallagher received a gold medal on the podium, but the runner-up was loudly cheered when she received her silver. And there's an explanation for all this. Gallagher is a transgender athlete who was born a biological male and therefore has a vastly superior physiology to show for it. And there's viral video clips from the race show.
Has a vastly superior physiology. Everybody knows men have vastly superior physiologies. That's why nature decided to give them the power to bear children and life, right? Isn't that right? That the uterus is in the... Wait a minute. I am so done with the vastly superior physiology conversation. Like, it is like he's saying it like it's a natural fact, dude. Do you all think testosterone's that good? Do you think that LeBron James has more testosterone than everyone? That's not what makes people good athletes. Having more or less testosterone has nothing to do with it. Although I will say human growth hormone, which a lot of athletes absolutely use, and yet nobody says anything about it, definitely does affect that. But it's just like, it's this is I'm not even prepared to get into how much I have to say about this issue, but this is how Piers sets this up for all of us, right? Basically, isn't it great that, and here he goes on.
I got towered over many of the competing girls, displaying greater height, power, and speed that frankly made a mockery of any pretense to fairness or equality. The reaction of the crowd is a small moment in the grand scheme of things, but it might prove to be extremely significant. A couple of years ago, it would have been very different. This would have been hailed as he led his progressive symbolic victory for inclusivity and tolerance. But now mainstream opinion is finally waking up to what is honestly insane. World Athletics has banned trans athletes who've been through male puberty from competing against women. But the state-level bureaucrats are miles behind. The Oregon authorities say they define a woman based on their consistently asserted gender identity. But honestly, that's just disingenuous bullshit. Yes, trans people deserve the same rights from the...
Piers is saying bullshit on his show. He said shit. He's on YouTube now.
As everybody else. They should have fairness and equality. Should have the same human rights as me. But you can't consistently assert the massive physical differences that come from...
Bro, you're not winning any athletic competition. Let me just say that. So now he's going to go back to like, but you can't... Men's bodies are superior, except for mine, obviously, because I've had one too many Neapolitan ice creams. But other than that, I like biscuits. Why can't we have biscuits?
Being born male or female and compete in sport. Those rights cannot come at the expense of women's rights to fairness and equality in their own sport. Now, for years, anyone...
Shut the fuck up about women's rights in sports. You don't care. Nobody cares.
...prepared to speak up about this like me was instantly shamed and vilified as a transphobe. But the reaction of the crowd in Oregon, which is actually skews more liberal than conservative, shows the silent majority might finally be fighting back and letting their feelings be heard loud and clear. Well, joining me to debate this and more, our comedian and podcaster James Barr, Uncensored contributor Esther Krakow, Outkick host Tommy Lahren, and the host of the Bituation Room podcast, Francesca Fiorentini.
There we go. Full Bituation Room. Hang on. Can we just... Is Esther's last name... Is Esther's last name Cracker? I'm just going to leave that there.
I watched a video of this as a father of a 12-year-old girl who loves a bit of sport. And honestly, my heart just sank. When I heard the booing, I was thrilled, not because the athlete was being booed. I felt awful for the trans athlete, but because I...
Did you actually feel awful for the trans athlete? I don't think you gave a shit about the trans athlete.
Finally felt that the silent majority were finding their voice. What did you think?
The silent majority.
Yeah, I also
I'm going to
think
fast forward,
that
Tommy,
it's
because
big
it's
that
too
this
much.
happened in a place like Oregon. Oregon is not conservative, maybe certain parts, but certainly the majority of Oregon is certainly more on the left side. So I think the fact that the crowd is saying, hey, this is unacceptable, that's a big moment. But we just have to stop denying this, Piers. I mean, the silent majority, and I would agree that the majority, actually, the more vocal majority now, is saying that this is absolutely ludicrous. And listen, I think we need to stop talking about biological men competing against biological women in women's sports. This is a trans person, a trans woman competing against actual women. Stop dismissing women by calling us biological women. We are just women. So I want to put that out there first. But why are we constantly, when I say we, why is popular culture constantly asserting that trans people, their feelings, their emotions, their inclusion is more important than the majority of women who just want to have fairness, want to compete, want to have achievements, accomplishments, and opportunities? Why do their feelings matter more than the feelings of the women that they're competing against? It's ridiculous. We keep coddling and kowtowing to this madness. I hope we're seeing the end of it, and I think within the next couple of years we will.
The next couple of years, we will excitedly ban all trans people from sports. Don't worry. Progress is coming, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to ban people. Now, I want to just take a moment to say that both Tommy Lahren and Piers Morgan are actually correct about public opinion. And there might be people listening to me right now who also believe that trans women, although notice how nobody talks about trans men, even though they're the ones literally getting testosterone. They're getting testosterone injections, but nobody's mad about trans men competing in men's sports. But let's put that aside. I want to say that according to NBC News, 69% of the American public does believe that transgender people shouldn't compete in sports of their own gender, of the gender they identify, which is not like that's a majority. That's 2023 Gallup poll. 1,000 people polled in the United States, 69% say that. Now, I'm totally ready to admit that that exists. Like, I'm not going to deny that reality that many people believe that. But I also think we have work to do. That we need to actually make progress on this, because I will reiterate, the number of trans athletes who are not just competing, but winning, and remember, nobody gives a shit when trans athletes lose, is so minuscule, is so minor. Just because if you think, again, these are the same people, although Piers Morgan swears he believes in trans rights for everything else, sure. But you'll hear Esther soon freak out about bathrooms, and I'll explain, I have thoughts on that for there, but it's like, the idea is like, they think that it's just sports. Oh, it's just sports. It's not. Trans people are a fraction of all people, and trans athletes are a fraction of trans people, right? There's not there's not disproportionately more Olympic gold medalists among the trans population. People are just insane. So this is me being asked to get mad at a high school track and field competition in Oregon on a fucking national platform. Get mad or support people booing a minor. I'm not going to do that. I'm just not going to do that for literally anyone. This is the least important story of not just the day, not just a week, not just a month, the entire year. It is the least important story. Now, I don't go fully that, but I do explain sort of why, like, where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I mean, I'm amazed that every woman, frankly, doesn't agree with you.
I'm amazed at every woman. In other words, you're not really a woman if you don't hate trans women. And in fact, that's like, I love that. Again, this is like, they want to revoke my woman status. They're like, if you don't actually hate trans women, are you a real woman? What's a woman? A woman is someone who hates trans women. Like, no thanks, not me.
Unfairness and inequality is so obvious. But Francesca, I can see you actually going berserk here with indignation. So presumably you don't agree.
I mean, please don't speak for me. You know what I'm saying? Like, either of you, please don't speak for me. Please don't speak for all women. Just let's get that out of the way right now, because I do disagree. I think about, what if your 12-year-old kid was Aiden? Wouldn't that be incredible? Wouldn't you be proud of Aiden?
No.
And how much would it?
No, absolutely not.
So this is where I have a choice, because he goes, no, I wouldn't, absolutely not. And I go, cool. And what I want to say is, you're a shit dad. You're a shit parent. And in fact, parents of trans kids, like, have said and have testified actually to the fact that once they finally embrace their kid for the gender that they believe they are, that everything opened up for them, that everything was like good. Their kid's mental health was better. Their relationship with their kid was better. They suddenly got along. Like, everything was better when they finally just supported who their kid was. That's it. But no, you have Piers openly being like, no, I wouldn't be happy. I'm not even saying, wouldn't it have sucked to be the kid? Because I guess he said it would have. I'm just saying, wouldn't you be happy for your kid if they won a competition like that? No, I would not.
Unless that child had not even reached puberty, and in the case of my daughter, for example, and someone is trying.
Now we are talking about his daughter's puberty. Suddenly I'm in a conversation I really don't want to be in, and I almost mentioned that, but I held back.
Trying to convince her that if you just put your hand up and say that you're a boy, you can suddenly compete against a different biological sex. I'd say it's all madness.
Piers, this is what's crazy about it. Do you think that that's what's driving trans women to compete as athletes is that they're like, if I transition to become a woman, I can win a gold medal in a high school track and meet competition.
Well, no, hang on, Francesca. I don't care.
That is so absurd to me.
I
It's
don't
the same
care.
thing. Hang on,
Francesca,
let me speak.
I don't care. The reality is they're doing it, right? And the point is that to me, the answer is obvious.
They're not. The reality is they're doing it. So he's basically like, yes, that's what I think they're doing. I think that trans athletes are part of a massive conspiracy to win a bunch of high school, middle school, elementary school, and college medals so that they can be in the feel the power and the glory of, wait for it, women's sports, the most glorified, overvalued, highest paying, most powerful roles in our society. If aliens were to land tomorrow and they're like, who runs things around here? Everyone would automatically say, obviously, women who do sports. I can see that. You can see that. Women who do sports, it is perhaps the most glorified position in all the land. It's just like so funny to me that they think that transitioning is a long con to win a shitty medal at a high school. Are you fucking serious? And again, I will get into this, but let's wait for the bathroom part. Not doing it to win a medal. They're doing it because that is their identity.
But they're winning medals at the expense of actual women who can't compete with them physically.
Okay.
It's why we separate the sexes.
You know what? Like, I actually Googled this.
Hang on.
Oh, Piers really wants. Oh, look at him. He's latching onto me. Hang on. I wanted to answer this, and I've got a lot of gotcha questions. Here we go, and then we'll eat biscuits. I'm embarrassed to be a woman when I see women freaking out about trans women winning one out of so many competitions.
It's not just one.
Okay,
it's happening in swimming with Leah Thomas.
Hang on.
It's happening in
seriously though. It really is embarrassing for me. Like I think this is when men see like Andrew Tate be like, you've got to get bitches, and in order to do that, you've got to, treat them like trash. And I say that the bigger your muscle, the more rape you're allowed to do. Like when men see Andrew Tate, I imagine that some men who are decent people are like, that's a really horrible representation of men, and that makes me embarrassed. When me as a woman sees other women freaking out about trans women in sports, it truly makes me embarrassed. Like that makes me recoil because I'm like, ugh, like revoke your vagina. You know what I'm saying? Give your vagina to someone who needs it, like a trans woman.
All sorts of sports.
Yes, because it makes us look really pathetic, honestly. It makes us look like losers and whiners. And guess what? I'm not a loser or a whiner. You know what I actually want to talk about when it comes to women's sports? Why is Caitlin Clark being paid 80 times less than her counterpart entering the NBA?
Well, that's quite straightforward too.
Because nobody watches
Women don't want to talk about that.
Hold on. Can I ask you a
Women
question?
like Esther, because nobody watches it, because fuck women. I defend women's sports. Because nobody fucking cares about women. Fuck women, all women, fuck the sports, fuck the shirts, fuck the... They deserve to be raped, but I believe in women. Like, nobody would get like, okay. Now, obviously, she's going to make the capitalist argument. They'll sort of like, okay, but nobody watches it. Again, talk to anyone who's smarter than me about women's sports. It is chicken or the egg when it comes to actual investment in them, right? Advertisers, not really advertisers. Caitlin Clark's got like sponsorships up the waz. But a lot of advertisers and cable companies and CEOs, execs and whatever, they'll always be like, well, there's no audience. And it's like, well, if you don't air it, there can't be an audience. If a woman scores a goal in the middle of the woods and no one's around to see it, you know what I'm saying? Like, you have to put it on air first. You have to actually make space for women's sports before you can say nobody watches it. Nobody watches it because the shit's not aired. You know what I'm saying?
Hold on, Francesca. Let me ask you a question. If I hit you over the head with a bat,
here we go,
and I said the plan wasn't to kill you, it's because you had a fly in your head, would you still not go to the police for assault? Does my intention matter? Because that's exactly what.
I'm just trying to Rube
What-
Goldberg,
what is
whatever the hell it is you're
That's
saying.
exactly
No,
what
I'm
you're
with you.
saying. Just because trans people are not
Do you know what?
identifying as trans to basically erode women's sports, that makes it okay. That's exactly what they're doing. This is
You think that's what they're
absolutely
doing?
I
Wait,
wanna
you
say
think
something.
you think
Hang on,
trans
don't
people
talk over
were
each
put
other.
on earth
Let me finish.
to
You know what?
They're eroding women's sports, guys. Look, even some people who don't believe that trans women should participate in sports or of their gender, like even you all know that's bullshit. Eroding women's sports. Yeah, before all this, we really would talk about the Oregon high school track and field meets. I mean, like who was in first place, who was in second, like who was bronze, like who had an injury, and we it was just so impactful for everyone. And now that the trans have decided to compete, it's all eroded.
The issue
Attack
is,
women's
you know what
sports.
the
Don't
issue
talk over
is.
each other.
You know what the
Let
issue
Esther
is.
finish her point,
You
then
know
you
what
can
the
respond,
issue is.
Francesca.
They are useful idiots like you that are validating ascientific nonsense. There's no such thing as gender identity. Being trans identifying is a mental illness. A reality that exists only in your head should not be validated, and specifically not at the expense of people that are just going about their business trying to win sporting tournaments or trying to use
There's
a loo.
useful
And
idiots
if
like you that are leading to the
if
death
you
of trans
feel
people,
embarrassed
because
about people
All right, let
thinking
Francesca
anything,
respond.
then you can basically go to an island where all women think like you, and you can compete with all the biological men you want, but do not impose your backward views on the rest of us and have the audacity to call us regressive.
Okay, Francesca, you respond.
don't impose your backwards view on us and call us regressive. So here's the thing about my reaction. When she called me useful idiot, I was like, oh. I was like, I need to start filing my nails for this because I took offense. And I have to say, and I did say what she's doing is leading to the death of trans people. But when she said transgenderism is a mental illness, I really should have taken more issue with that. I was just, again, the useful idiot was ringing in my ear because I'm obviously a narcissist. But fuck you. Transgenderism is a mental illness. Fuck you, man. Just seriously, fuck you. And this is what, if any of haters are watching this right now, let me just put it to you like this. You will never know what it's like to be in the wrong body. Just like if you're not poor, you'll never know what it's like to not know where your next meal is coming from. Just like if you're black, you'll never know what it's like to be treated by the police in a completely different manner. Just like if you are a woman, you're not going to know what it's like when, dudes don't refuse to make eye contact with you and just talk to the men in the room. Let's talk to the men. You know what I'm saying? All kinds of things. There are so many reasons. And so I remember when I was getting, for lack of a better term, woke on trans issues, and I was 19 and I was in college and I was organizing alongside, activists for different causes, against the war, for global justice, whatnot. And I had trans comrades. And they were, first of all, so kind to help people who didn't understand, explain different terms, different terminology, what pronouns were, how people like to identify, like female to male, male to female. Like it all was new to me. I didn't study it. I didn't actually take, and I should have, but I didn't take a study of the gay rights movement or the trans rights movement. I think that would have been tight. Did a lot of women's studies stuff. But I think when it fully hit me, when I was able to be a full ally, in my opinion, was when I truly realized that I will never understand what it is like. That there is no part of me, if I think it's different, if I think it's strange, if it doesn't make sense to me, that is actually all irrelevant. That what is relevant is empathy and compassion. And what is relevant is trans people living lives of dignity, trans people being able to be supported, trans people not being relegated, shunned by their communities, by their families, by their churches, by their workplaces. And once I centered that, once I center human rights and how I would want to be treated, how everyone needs to be treated, everything else goes away. Everything that you feel about, I don't know, that'd be kind of weird. Could you imagine doing that? Everything that you feel about, but shouldn't trans women not, or trans girls not participate in women's sports? Everything you feel about, well, what about hormone replacement therapy for a 13-year-old that it's trans? Isn't that weird? Shouldn't we legislate? No, all of that goes away. And you realize this is about people's individual rights. This is about people's individual bodies. This is about people being able to live as full citizens in any society, and that includes being able to be athletes in their high schools. This is about the right for families to privacy. This is about rights to do with your body what you will. And that sounds really Republican, to be super pro-liberty, pro-privacy. Get off my lawn, get off my fucking dick. Get off the dick that I want to cut off. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what it's about. It's not about truly understanding. If you think you're never going to understand it, you won't. You may never understand, because you'll never understand what it's like to be trans, period. So once you let that go, just let it go. You can let it go. You don't have to it doesn't have to make sense in your mind. But humanity, but people, but civil rights, that has to make sense in your mind. But equal treatment has to make sense in your mind. But not booing a 16-year-old should make sense in your mind.
I'll come to James.
My response is this. Look, I care more about human life and people actually. I care about the right to privacy. I care about people surviving and living in this world. Yes, I do.
You don't seem to care about the right to privacy of biological women not wanting to share their spaces with biological men. What about them?
What about the number of trans youth who
hold
commit
on.
suicide every single year?
What about biological women not wanting to share a bathroom with a biological man? Talk about that.
Now we're talking about bathrooms. So she wants to go into a bathroom and she's interrupting me.
Answer that question. What about them? Do they not matter?
Look, lady, you can go into every bathroom and pick a fight with every person who you think is in the wrong bathroom. That's your prerogative.
If a man goes into a bathroom with my daughter,
a teenager,
what should I do?
A teenager being booed. Guys, so here's how you know I'm actually crushing this debate. Let me just explain for any asshole that's watching this, as I'm not crushing this debate. When someone else just moves the conversation, you don't let them. When someone's like, what about the bathrooms? Bitch, we're talking about transports. Nobody's talking about bathrooms. Because that shit stopped polling well with Republicans and they stopped talking about it. Oh, yeah. And by the way, I was just at the fucking Seattle airport, and there was nothing but shared bathrooms. Each person got a private stall. And I didn't see anybody freaking out about it, although I did hear a story about two women going at it with one another because each of them thought the other was trans, which is really fucking hilarious. So that's why I said it's your prerogative if you want to inspect everyone's genitals who goes into the bathroom. You know what I like to do in the bathroom? I like to take a shit in peace. I don't even really like to take a shit in a stall that's all women. But now, with these co-ed bathrooms where you got like ceiling to floor privacy, hell yeah, I'm dropping one. You know what I'm saying? Subscribe to the Bitchuation Room right here. I'll tell you where and when I drop it. CTAC, 9 a.m. Monday. I'm just kidding. Fucking with you. Patreon.com/Bitchuation Room if you like me. Subscribe to this channel. Obviously, what are you doing? Look, I'm owning this, bitch. Let's not bully, okay? I believe it was Melania Trump who said, be best. And we know what bullying leads to. Stephen Miller, Okay, so here's Franny trying to lighten it up a little bit because we going real hot and heavy real quick, and I had a few lines prepared, and be best was one of them, as was we know what bullying leads to, which is Stephen Miller, and those are just good lines, just so solid lines. Shows she got a sense of humor, she's smart. What doesn't she have? What doesn't she have? Stay mad, haters.
Francesca, I'm going to come to James, but because to me, there's conflating two issues. You can absolutely support trans rights to fairness and equality, as I do and consistently have.
Sure.
But you can also see that there is obviously a massive problem now, increasing now in women's sport. And there's a reason, and we've had this conversation, James, but you gave a preposterous answer last time. There's a reason we separate sexes in the Olympics, in the World Championships, because otherwise women would never win anything.
Look, I think...
So that's why we do it. It's not because women aren't great athletes.
would
They're
never
great
win
athletes
anything.
when competing.
Women would never win anything is just really, really funny to say. Again, Piers, who obviously Adonis, I mean, underneath all of that, just chiseled, who thinks that like the male body, like is like the perfect specimen of strength and speed. And it's like, no, man, it's that women wouldn't win. It's not that women wouldn't win anything. That's so ridiculous. And also, guys, here's the reason why we don't do genital checks and we don't do hormone checks, although, human growth hormone, that could be different, and steroids and stuff like this. Because actually, if you did hormone level checks, there are some biological women who have more testosterone in them than men. And there's some men who have a lot of estrogen. It changes. And so gender, again, is fluid. It's not confined. And so the way that we generally organize ourselves is by asking people and people identifying as women, as men. And if you think, and this is my thing with the bathrooms, if you think there is a grand conspiracy that, well, why wouldn't you just transition to a woman, take a bunch of estrogen, go on some hormone blockers for testosterone, spend thousands of dollars to get chest surgery and have breasts, spend even more money to go through genital surgery, right? And have your, like, basically, I think it's basically trans affirming care, but I'm just doing this. It is incredibly intense to have surgery to get a vagina. I think it's like I think the penis goes inside. It's a lot. It's a lot. I'm sorry. But it's if you think that biological men, in quotes, are going through all of that to compete in women's sports, you are so fucking out of your mind. And also, if you think that biological men are undergoing all that, getting their peen turned inside in to transition so they can go to bathrooms and prey on biological women, you're so out of your mind. And you know why? Because that's what you would do. I've made this point before, but everyone who thinks because they cannot wrap their brains around someone actually being trans, mostly men, think, oh, they're doing it so they can watch women pee because that's what they would do. Oh, they're doing it so they can finally be a gold medalist because that's what they would do with their fucking flabby ass bodies. They think that suddenly in women's sports, they would absolutely crush it and be an incredible, oh my God, I'd be an Olympian. This body is a fucking women's Olympian. It's because that's the way their sick little minds work. And it's easier for some people to identify with perverts, i.e. anyone who would go into a bathroom to watch other people pee, than it is to identify with a trans person that literally just wants to use a bathroom. Do you understand what I'm trying to tell you guys? Do you understand? Like, it is because that is the warped ass mind. And I made this point on Twitter, and I'll make it here again. It is the equivalent of being like, so why'd you transition? Is it because you could have boobies, like super accessible, and you could just like touch them all day long and like squish them and like touch them, and be like, oh, that's my big boobs. I got big bazongas. I got big bazongas. I could touch them. Like, that is what some cis men think. Sorry, I'm not using proper terms, cis. I don't know. I've been like so inculcated by this biological man bullshit. That is what cis men think. They think obviously some reactionary cis men believe that like you would become trans so you could touch on titties all day long and those titties would be your own. Like, that's because that's what you would do. Anyway, yes. Meanwhile, Insuk says high school logic. Yes, exactly what it is. It's fucking high school logic. Thank you, Todd Gentry, for that super chat, and thank you, Just Julie, for this. There's a lot more. Christ, this is so long.
Against people physically born.
Listen, I have so much to say. I want to explode. Firstly, Esther, you're the only thing making anyone angry or incensed right now. So you're causing me a mental health issue. So really, if it's a mental illness, it's actually you. I would like to take a pill
you can all be
to
mentally
remove
unwell
you
together.
from my life. Going back to the state here, like most of the female winners in this sport, they are hitting around 22 to 24 seconds, which is exactly what the gold medalist won here. And then also following up with what you said.
What's your point? What's your point?
My point is, this is normal for a woman.
No, you're
This
missing
is
the
normal speed for a woman in a race. But let's get back to what you're saying. You're talking about women's safety in changing rooms. Let me finish, please. You're talking about women's safety in changing rooms. That's what Esther brought this conversation down to. But what I do know about is that 1 in 3 women in America are abused violently in their lifetime. And in every single day in America, 13,000 women are a victim. Why are we talking about one trans woman being in a changing room?
How dare you, a man, say anything about women feeling unsafe?
I am allowed to talk about safety
with biological men. No, you can't, because you're not a woman. You have never had a period. You've never been a woman in a woman's toilet.
Esther, is
so
that
don't
you're
even mention
picking
that.
on one. Well,
I'm not picking on that. I'm talking about the fact that women around the world are being affected.
Guys, if you're a cis woman listening to this, tell me, are you afraid of a trans woman peeing next to you? Are you afraid of that? Is that the biggest problem in women's bathrooms? No. Let me explain to anyone listening and to all the women, whether cis or trans, you know what it is. The biggest problem in women's bathrooms and changing rooms is what? The fucking line. Are you kidding me? Way too long of a line. Why? The men's restrooms in and out. But women, because we got to wipe more and we want to smell good and we actually wipe good, we take forever. And there aren't enough stalls. There need to be more stalls. And it was very funny when I was in that SeaTac airport and there was a man and he was in line. He's like, is this a line? Yes. Okay. Welcome to the Jim Crow of bathrooms, all right? It still exists for women everywhere. The lines are fucking crazy. I'm not really trying to make that comparison, but it worked, sort of. But like, for real though, it's just so funny. Nobody's afraid. Nobody cares. It's the fucking bathroom. You know what I'm afraid of? I'm afraid of the person next to me hearing the plop from my poo. Okay? I'm afraid that, I can't shit in peace. Because, there's nobody in the bathroom, but there's, one other person, and I really need to just, get, my mind right and, zen it out so I can poo. That's what I'm most afraid of, is someone going to hear me poo. If we could turn up the music, I don't give a shit who's shitting next to me.
Because we're validating asexual.
You're shouting at biological men. Your words. Why am I? And you're allowed to talk about biological men. So why am I allowed to talk about women?
Hang on. We are conflating various issues here. So let's get back to the actual issue.
Yes, we are conflating various issues.
The issue of this young sophomore, Aidan Gallagher. I come back to Tommy here. I know this debate always inspires everyone to get very angry, and there's lots of allegations of transphobia and so on. I really think they're missing the central point. There is a reason we separate sexes in sport, and the reason, like I said, when the Olympics are in Paris later this summer, if you allowed women and men to compete in a generalized way, then women would win almost no medals. Literally, other than 1 or 2 events, possibly equestrian, possibly archery. There are very few things.
Women would win equestrian and archery. Shut the fuck up, dude. You're just again, the male body isn't that amazing. Calm down.
Anything that involves power or stamina or speed or no.
Piers, can I ask you a question really quickly?
Yes.
Because have you ever undergone any kind of hormone replacement therapy?
Oh, you mean chopped off his penis? Because
no,
that's
I haven't.
Hang on. I'm not talking to you, Esther.
Yeah.
Hang on.
Okay.
Sorry. That's really funny. Esther needs to shut the fuck up. Well, I'm trying to explain something to Piers. I'm talking to Piers.
Yeah.
Because actually the body does undergo an incredible amount of toil.
What it doesn't do, Francesca, I've heard this argument.
Hang on.
It doesn't change your body mass.
No,
it doesn't.
It does.
No,
it
it doesn't.
Absolutely can change your body mass.
No, it doesn't.
Absolutely. The
it
amount
doesn't.
of
You
hormones
remain as muscular. I know this. Talk to someone like Caitlyn Jenner,
Piers.
who was, as a man,
Oh my God,
was the decathlon gold medal winner for the United States of America, and was then, when she took up golf, having transitioned, was told she could tee off from the women's tees. Right, the women's tees are 50 yards further ahead than the men's, and she said she was winning every tournament.
Asking Caitlyn Jenner for any.
So, yeah, that's Caitlyn Jenner. Like, look, once again, when you're undergoing like hormone replacement therapy or puberty blockers or all this stuff, your body is going through a whole lot. There are all kinds of unforeseen complications, recovery time, all kinds of shit that you can go through, right? To say nothing of mood changes and everything that could affect how you are performing. But I'll grant Piers, and again, I'll grant the 69% of Americans who maybe don't agree with me on this, that there could be an advantage. Like, I'm going to grant that. There could be an advantage. But what is the disadvantage? To me, the disadvantage is saying, no, second-class citizen, there are some things you cannot do. And I'm not willing to do that. I think that's why the Oregon School District says that. I think that's why they know the slippery slope of saying, okay, yes, trans people are people, except there's some things these people cannot do. What does that set up, right? So they would rather allow the 1 in 1,000 or more, that's so generous. The 1 in thousands athlete who wants to compete and trans athlete that wants to compete that happens to win, they would rather allow that than begin a cycle where we know where it ends. And it's not just sports. People who are like, oh, it's just sports. Bullshit, man. Because you immediately heard just in this debate it go to bathrooms. And then you can immediately hear it going to all kinds of things. Being out in public, whether or not like what jail cell you get held in, which already is a big issue. Whether or not you can change your identity on your driver's license, right? There's all kinds of things and all kinds of ways that when you say you give an inch to the transphobes, and yes, I'm going to call them transphobes, or people who think, no, but sport is unique. No, because it creates still a differentiation of treatment. And once again, we are going by what people say, what they are. Because if you were to let's do the genital check, let's do the hormone check, man, you get into a fucking world of ridiculousness that is absolutely not worth it and has nothing to do with athletics. Nothing to do with it. Can you imagine, like, out of all the scandals that there already are in, like, women's gymnastics, be like, yeah, no, we're gonna have a genital inspector. That's Hector, the genital inspector. He comes along with the US women's team. He's really a good guy. No, it's all on the up and up. He just does a little touchy tooty-too, and once every 2 or 3 months, just in case someone's growing a dick. All right. And that's Hector. He's the general inspector and he's perfectly normal and he gets paid $150,000 to look at little girls' vaginas. It's super normal. This is the world that they want. This is literally the world that they want.
Any advice or practical information is like asking you, Piers, for how to get a six-pack. Like, what are we doing?
Actually, I've got quite an impressive growing six-pack as my Instagram feed.
The point is that does my Instagram feed will tell you? Is he working out on his Instagram? We're supposed to now go to his Instagram and thirst over Piers Morgan? No, thank you. Oh, God, there's a lot more.
There's a lot of changes. It's incredibly difficult. I want to point this out.
Tell me.
Piers, I want to point this out because your guests here,
Okay, so Tommy Lahren gets mad at James, who says that, like, I wouldn't listen to Caitlyn Jenner. I think that I didn't agree with James there, like, listening to Caitlyn Jenner. No, Caitlyn Jenner's trans, and Caitlyn Jenner is a trans woman who's also a vile Republican. Because guess what? Trans women are just people. Trans people are just people, and they have every right to have backwards ass views just the same as anyone else. They're literally the same kinds of people. You can absolutely be trans. Like, people who defend trans rights, that's not saying literally every trans person is an angel that's fallen from heaven. And no, So again, this like, oh, you would give them special status? Where? You would think with the trans bathroom debate that there's a special bathroom that is gold, that has like scented toilet paper, that has beautiful music playing, there are harps in the corner, and that's the trans bathroom. Nobody is arguing for trans people to be treated above, better than, or anything. Literally, that's not what anyone's saying. That's not what anyone has ever been saying. So it's so funny to me that they go anyway. Tommy's actually quite boring on this. So
talk about the snake eating its own tail. They're sitting there talking about trans rights and affirming transgender ideology, but then they're saying that Caitlyn Jenner, who is probably the most famous trans person, that doesn't count.
Yeah.
Because Caitlyn Jenner is not only a Republican, but Caitlyn Jenner also calls out biological men competing in women's sports. So your guests sit here and
Caitlyn
they cry
Jenner.
boo-hoo
Trans
tears
women.
about trans rights,
women, please.
but then they dismiss Caitlyn Jenner.
So I'm trying to say trans women because I really hate this biological men thing. Just trans women. Just call them trans women. It's okay. You just said that, bitch. Like, Tommy is so inconsistent. She started off being like, stop with the biological men, biological female. I don't want to be called biological woman. I'm just a woman. And it's like, and then she's like, biological men. Just call them trans women. Just call them trans women, dude. That's all you got to do. If you want to call them, I could call them women. You could just say women. But if you want to say trans women, say trans women.
It's amazing. These are also the same people who claim to be feminists, but also don't care about actual women being robbed of opportunities.
Yeah.
That's why liberalism is a disease. And you can just let these people talk and they argue with themselves, Piers.
The point is, if Aidan Gallagher competed according to their biological sex, they would not be succeeding. They wouldn't be winning state
There. Piers can't gender her properly, can he? He can't say her. There.
They would actually not even be qualifying for the finals. That is the point everyone's missing.
Piers,
is that actually
why do you care about
women's integrity of women's sport?
But you don't. Have you done a segment on Caitlin Clark and pay disparity? Have you done where were you when the U.S. women's national team?
He doesn't need
in
to.
the United States?
You have no idea.
He doesn't need to do a segment.
Well, hang on,
Esther.
Francesca,
Oh my
you have no
God.
idea.
Oh my God.
Actually,
Shut up.
You have no
But
idea
Piers,
what I've said about
when
women's
the women's
pay.
What about when the women's national team wins in the United States, right? They've won like 4 times at this point. And what happens? Oh, Megan Rapinoe, who is both a lesbian and also like one-time knelt during the national anthem. She's not a real patriot. They freak out. Donald Trump tweets about her.
No, you're missing Megan Rapinoe. Megan Rapinoe is a very, very good football player, but also incredibly irritating. And I noticed that when she...
It's just like, happens to be a lesbian, that has nothing to do with it, but any one woman who doesn't like me is irritating, as well as women who refuse to come on my show, like Meghan Markle. Irritating, and happens to be black, and I just, they're just irritating and uppity. But it's just so funny to me, because this is a great point. This is an amazing point that Piers Morgan basically makes here. Just amazingly tone deaf.
She retired, it was only then she said that she wanted trans women to be playing in the American women's national team. In other words, when it wasn't possible for that person to take her position. Because here's a scenario for you. Lionel Messi puts his hand up and says, actually, I'm feeling like a woman today. Do you play him in the American women's national team, Francesca? Yes or no?
Lionel Messi had to undergo an incredible...
Yes or no?
He had to undergo an incredible amount of treatment when he was young. He had a bunch of like...
Would you allow him to put his hand...
So I'm trying to make a point, but I'm not doing a great job. And I'm going to point out my flaws in this. Lionel Messi underwent a ton of treatment when he was a kid because he had a growth stunt. He was not growing. And so he was obviously born in Argentina. I lived for 5 years in Buenos Aires. He was from Rosario, and his dad took him to one of the biggest football clubs in Buenos Aires, which was River Plate, and was like, hey, look at this amazing kid, but he's got this growth problem. He's not growing, and he needs massive treatments. I don't know if they were hormone treatments specifically, but he needs treatment in order to grow properly. I mean, he's still like, what, 5'5"? He's very, very short, 5'7". And River Plate did not invest in him. They were like, we don't have the money for that. Maybe you should go somewhere else. So they went to Barcelona. They went to Spain. And Spain was like, yep, we'll pay for it. And we did all the treatments. So that's the point that I was making. Like, you could argue that gave Messi an unfair advantage. The fact that he underwent incredible amounts of treatment as a child, and that gave him, an unfair advantage on the pitch. Like, you could, again, people take all kinds of medicine, all kinds of performance enhancing drugs every single day. He was He was diagnosed with a growth disorder, and he had to be injected with growth hormones in each of his legs every single night. Ugh. I hate the internet. I can't find fucking... But anyway, so that's the point that I was trying to make. I didn't quite seal the deal, but here's Piers, and he thinks he's got me because if Lionel Messi wants to play, would you let him? And I'm like, fuck yeah, I would. Yes, we stan a trans Messi.
Say he's a woman
for him to
playing the American women's national team.
He had a growth spurt. I'm a big Messi fan, so... But let me just explain this.
Answer my question. Would you allow him, if he said, I'm a woman, to play in the American women's national team?
You're using the wrong pronoun
Yes, right now. Hell yeah. Are you kidding me?
Wow.
Messi on the US women's national team? Hell yeah.
Would you allow Usain Bolt to do that and be in the sprinting team?
Yes, because that would mean they're a trans woman. They identify as women.
I get it. So just to be clear, you'd let Lionel Messi play in the women's national football team and destroy women's football forever. You'd let Usain Bolt...
it'd be very difficult to get a ticket, which would suck.
I want to do a little checklist here. You'd let Usain Bolt compete as a sprinter in the American women's Olympic team?
Yes.
Okay. You would let Floyd Mayweather compete as a boxer in the women's American boxing team?
Yeah,
you are
you have to be like the heavy... So here's the problem with this. There was a clear joke there, and I didn't actually make the joke. It was distasteful, but it's very funny. Which is, no, I would not let Floyd Mayweather compete as a woman because he's hit enough women in his lifetime. So that was a joke that I left on the table because I am not perfect. And that would have been a fun rule of 3. Like, yes, Messi, yes, Hussein. Absolutely not Floyd Mayweather. Absolutely not.
Lunatic.
I completely agree with Francesca. And I go
they
further,
would have
Piers.
to transition.
You always say that you want to be a penguin. I would let you live at London Zoo in a cage like the rest of the penguins.
You know what? I'd be a very popular exhibit.
You would. And you'd be locked up.
Here's the problem. It is so delusional. The idea you would let Usain Bolt say, I'm a woman, and compete against women on a racetrack when no man can compete with him, right? It's utterly ridiculous.
Well, I'm just convinced that they don't actually believe this, but the logical conclusion of their ludicrous arguments facilitates the need to actually say these things. Also, this is a testament to the poor quality of public education in both the US and the UK, that you both don't understand the basic economics of how sports entertainment works. If there are not enough bums on seats, you don't get paid enough. That's literally it. This thing that outraged about the fact that some female players don't make as much as some male athletes. Guess what? Go and buy the tickets to their games and start boosting up their viewing figures, and then maybe
look at the revenue for the Women's World Cup and compare it to the Men's World Cup.
Yeah, but Caitlin Clark broke records for how many people were watching the WNBA or whatever, women's college basketball. See, I don't know enough, but like women's college basketball, they were crushing it. Not me, because I don't watch sports broadly. Which, yeah, maybe you're like, no, it's bad. But like, I still know that she's getting $76,000 a year. Her counterpart is getting $6 million a year or $11 million a year. I think all these like rookie contracts are like, they're insane. They're insane.
They are light years away.
Can I say one thing?
Caitlin Clark was the most watched women's college player ever. The ratings were through the roof. She's getting sponsorships.
Compare it to the average male college viewership.
Okay, we're going to move on.
She had more views than them.
We are moving on to a different issue.
Okay, they're moving on, and I'm going to call it a moment because we had some fun times with Tommy Lahren talking about Harrison Butker. Speaking of sports, but I'll save that for Wednesday because Mama tired. But it's been real, y'all. We've talked Cuba, we've talked Piers Morgan and trans athletes. I hope I've made my case. I hope maybe I've changed some hearts and minds, even from people listening here. Look, I understand it's not a popular position, but once you actually say, "Who gives a shit? It's not my business," everything's all good, you know? And if you want to be a fucking sore loser, you could do it. Get your ass handed to you by a trans woman in a sport and become a right-wing star and stake your entire life and claim on trying to prevent trans women from competing. It's just so pathetic. That shit is so pathetic. And Jeremy Justice said, Piers women would never win anything. Gallagher lost 2 of the 3 races she competed in. Gallagher lost 2 of the 3 races she competed in to cisgender girls. He either didn't read the article or he's full of shit. I bet it's the latter. Yeah, no, it doesn't matter. He didn't read the article. He doesn't care. And honestly, to be honest with y'all, I don't care because I don't give a shit. If I'm not watching general sports, I don't give a shit about track and field meet in an Oregon high school. But that's a really good context, Jeremy. Like she didn't win all of them. It's not like, and again, can we understand that I want to be able to say this without misgendering Aiden, but it all comes not just from a sick and perverted view of what you think motivates trans people, but specifically trans women, but also this bizarre adulation of the male body. Like men are so vastly superior, and what could possibly, like, they are not superior. They're not jumping out of the gate and winning literally every single thing that they're doing, right? Like, it's so preposterous to claim that. And what's annoying to me is now I'm like, fuck, now I gotta to brush up on all of the stats and data from this really niche topic that I truly don't care about. JCast says, a trans person in the same bathroom is non-concerning to me. However, I'm afraid of sandpaper, TP. I would rather use my sock instead if I have to. Exactly. Or like when you can never find the end. You know what I mean? The ones where you're just like scrolling, rolling. Robert, thank you for your super chat. The reason I don't do general checks is because of that court order and being on the database. Exactly. It's a perv thing to do. We are literally talking about the genitals of a high school kid. Bad Lefty, Floyd does beat women. Yes, I made that joke. And Drew says, I owe you another beer because I'm a POS. Okay. I'll take your beer. I could use a beer right now, honestly. Thank you, Fight for the Cause, saying this guy for subscribing with Prime over on Twitch. You guys support the show. Patreon.com/Bitchuation We got three shows a week, man. If you're only watching 2, you're missing out. Bonus shows. Beach, Blonde, Bad, Built, Butch, Body. Wednesdays, 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. For those of you who already are patrons, thank you so much for being part of the Frantifa, being sexy ass mofos, and being, always supporting trans rights. Love y'all. Have a great weekend. See you next time. Later.